Now, there's some other problems that one noon verbs exhibit that we need to talk about. The good news here is that they only exhibit them in the cal stem, and they only exhibit these problems in 2 places in the cal stem. So under point number 2, I mentioned here the potential problems in the cal imperative and the cal infinitive construct. That's where we're going to see these, the imperative and the infinitive construct of the cal. And the issue is something called aphoresis. Aphoresis. The root 1 noon is going to undergo a process called aphoresis, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm just putting that in the title. Before we get to the weakness, though, where this happens, let's just talk about where it doesn't happen. One noon verbs in the cal imperative and the cal infinitive construct can follow a strong pattern like the strong verb pakad, or a weak pattern. And it's the weak pattern where aphoresis happens. Okay, so let's talk about the strong pattern first here. The strong pattern, 2.1. Generally, if the one noon verb has a cal imperfect form with theme vowel holum, then the cal imperative and infinitive construct follows the normal strong pattern. Let's just remind ourselves what the strong verb's imperfect pattern is. Look at pakad. That's the cal perfect 3ms. He appointed. The cal imperfect has what theme vowel? A holum. Okay? The normal theme vowel for cal active verbs is holum, yif code. Yif code. And nafal is the verb he fell in the cal. In the imperfect, it's yipol. We've already seen that. Yinpol becomes yipol. He will fall. But notice, what's my theme vowel here? My theme vowel is holum, and that's normal. And when my theme vowel is holum, then when I get to the imperative, this is going to follow the regular strong verb pakad in its formation of the cal imperative. The cal imperative is normally vocal shava under root 1, holum with root 2. Pakod for the imperative 2ms. Pakod, appoint, visit, and nafol. Nafol, vocal shava holum, fall. The cal infinitive construct under normal circumstances is pakod, vocal shava holum, just like the imperative was, and for nafal, nafol, because it has a holum theme vowel for its cal imperfect, to fall or the act of falling. So this is the critical thing. If my theme vowel in the cal imperfect for a one noon verb is holum, then it's going to behave very normally. If it's not holum, then I'm going to have the weak pattern showing up. Okay? So look at 2.2, weak pattern. If the one noon verb has a cal imperfect form with theme vowel non-holum, then the cal imperative and infinitive construct follows the weak pattern with aphoresis of root 1 noon. In this process known as aphoresis, the root 1 noon does what I like to call falling into Sheol. Root 1 noon falls into Sheol. When something falls into Sheol, you don't see it anymore. It's buried, it's gone. It goes missing completely and is not visible anywhere. Thus, the noon is not assimilated when aphoresis happens. Otherwise, we would see a dagesh forte, but we're not going to see a dagesh forte. It is now AWOL. So, just like we used to say, the noons of men have been attached the Marine Corps way, and that's why you see the dagesh forte, but these noons are not Marines anymore. They've gone AWOL. They've left the Marine Corps. Now, if you want to try to remember that the weak pattern only occurs with the cal imperative and the cal infinitive construct, I've got a little word to help you remember it. I've highlighted the Q for cal, the I for imperative, the I for infinitive, and the C for construct. So this spells something like quick, okay? Quick, Q-I-I-C, cal, imperative, and infinitive construct. And maybe you can remember quick by thinking quick, get me a doctor, because these verbs are sick. Anyhow, let's take a look at the cal imperative. Remember how to form the cal imperative. To form the cal imperative, you always start with the imperfect, and then you remove the nutty prefix, or as I like to say, you chop off the head. When you do this with your one noon verbs that do not have a holum theme vowel, you will not reinsert the root 1 nun that assimilated. You're going to let it fall into Sheol. So let's take a verb like nagash, which means to approach, and think of the Cal imperfect 3ms. It's yigash, yigash. The nun has assimilated into the gimel. It would have been yingash, but now it's yigash. Notice that my theme vowel is what? It's not holum, is it? It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever it is, it's non-holum, and that's the difference. It's either holum or non-holum. If it's holum, we follow the normal pattern. If it's non-holum, we follow the weak pattern. Okay? So this is yigash. Chop off the prefix, and what do you have left? You have gosh. Okay? That's it. The nun is gone. This dot that you see in the gimel is a dagesh lene, because gimels are begat gefat letters, and they come standard with what? That's right, with dagesh lene. So that is not the root 1 nun of nagash. That is not an assimilated nun. That's not a doubling dot. Where is root 1? We see root 2 here. We see root 3 here. Root 1 is missing. It's not visible by assimilation in a dagesh forte. It has fallen into, that's right, it's in Sheol down here, okay? It's in the grave. Now, what would the imperative 2fs look like? This is the imperative 2ms in the cow, gosh, which would be approach, okay? The 2fs would be to add the kirik yod to the end, right? So it would become what? G-shi. I'd get reduction of an open pretonic syllable. Ga-shi becomes gushi to vocal shava. So that would be telling a woman. Approach. How would I make the 2MP? It would be g-shu. I'd just change the kirik yod to a shurik. All right. So you remember these imperative personal endings. G-shu. All right. Let's look at the Cal infinitive construct. How do we form those with the weak pattern? Well, what you do is you drop the root 1 nun. You're going to leave roots 2 and 3. And then you're going to add a final tav. Remember, you're missing root 1 now. It's fallen into Sheol. So you have only 2 root letters. So an extra tav is added after root 3. I like to call this the bonus tav. You get a bonus tav. Take away root 1, add a bonus tav on the back, and then you're going to apply a segulate vowel pattern to the letters that are left. Okay? So let's take a look at nagash as an example. Remember, we have to learn what the imperfect is to find out what the theme vowel is. Here the theme vowel is non-holum, yigash, he will approach. If it's non-holum, then I follow the weak pattern that we're learning. And that is to take roots 2 and 3. Root 1 nun of nagash has fallen out. I add the bonus tav. I get now 3 consonants. And then what vowel pattern do I adopt? I adopt the segulate vowel pattern, which is double segul. And I accent the first syllable on segulates. Geshet. Geshet. Geshet is to approach. Okay? That's our infinitive construct, to approach. Geshet. What it looks like is a feminine singular noun now. And remember, infinitives are verbal nouns. Participles are verbal adjectives. Infinitives are verbal nouns. Okay? And so, in effect, by adding the bonus tav, we've created a kind of feminine noun out of a verb. Okay, the act of approaching. So that's how we do this. I've given you a chart here where we can just take a look at the main forms as they come to us in the 1 nun paradigm. The first row is the verb nafal, which you have the gloss for all of these. Cal imperfect is yipol. Notice the holum here is the theme vowel in the imperfect. And so the question here, is the imperfect theme vowel holum? The answer is yes, only on the first one. So this is the only one that follows the regular pattern. Imperative, nafol. Remember, we have a Cal imperative alternate form that has the kametz hey at the end. And the shava and the U-class holum it's like they switch places, and I get the short U-class kametz ketuf here. That is a kametz ketuf and a silent shavah. Nof la. Pakod, pokda are both ways to say appoint to a woman, to a man. Nafol and nofla are ways to say fall to a single man. The infinitive construct nafol and the infinitive construct with 3ms pronoun suffix noflo. His, that's the holem vav. Oops, I should have a silent shavah here. Noflo, his act of falling. Okay? Now, let's look at the rest of the forms real quickly. Nagash is to approach. The Cal imperfect, yigash. Notice my theme vowel is what? Well, whatever it is not holem, is it? It is a pathak. So the answer to this question is no. So, because there's not a holem for the Cal imperfect, it's going to follow in the Cal imperative and the Cal infinitive construct. It's going to follow the weak pattern, where root 1, noon is gone. I only see roots 2 and 3. With the strong pattern in the imperative, root 1 stays. You see the noon. Okay? So, I don't do nagash. I say just gash, approach. And that's 2ms form. The alternate form, gasha. Add the comma te. We get reduction of the open pretonic syllable, which is what verbs do. Gasha. Okay? Let's take a look at the imperatives here for the rest of these. Nasa is to travel. Imperfect, he will travel. Yasa, again, my theme vowel is not holem, it's pathak. Okay? Here, the theme vowel is just pathak as a matter of course. Here, the theme vowel is pathak because I've got what in root 3 position? You got it. That's a guttural, and gutturals prefer A-class vowels. And so, because it's not a holem, my imperative is just sa. Roots 2 and 3 are visible. Root 1 has fallen into Sheol, right? You can't see root 1 at all. And there's not even a dagesh lene here to confuse you in the Samic, because that's not a big Adkafat letter. Look at nasa here. To lift up. The imperfect, yasa. This would have been yasa with a pathak, because of the guttural in root 3 position, but there's something additionally weak about the aleph. It is both a guttural and it is an aleph that likes to quiesce, right? And when aleph quiesces, often the preceding short vowel that would have been here compensatorily lengthens, and that's why I have a long A there. Now, since the theme vowel is not a holem, then it undergoes aphoresis in root 1. Root 2 and 3 are visible. Root 1 falls into Sheol. And so instead of yasa, I get chop off the head, sa, sa. So tell one man, lift something. Okay? And then Nathan's imperfect is yitain. He will give. Notice that my theme vowel here is sere. There's no good reason for this. It just takes a sere theme vowel. Okay, nothing guttural about it. It's just yatain. But that means that the answer to the question, is the theme vowel holem, is no. And that means that Nathan likewise undergoes aphoresis with root 1. And so when I'm creating the imperative, it's just tain. Chop off the head of ye, and I'm left with tain. Give, tain. Alternate forms, gasha, sa becomes sa'a, sa becomes sa'a, tain becomes tana. Remember, there is always the alternate kamethe imperative to ms form. And this seems to reflect something like the cohortatives kamethe for the volitional mood there. All right, the infinitive construct is this second to the last column, and nafal follows the strong verb. So I see for nafal, because holem's my theme vowel in the cal imperfect, I get to still see the noon. Aphoresis does not happen. It's following the strong pattern. But nagash comes from yigash, no holem, so I have aphoresis of root 1 noon. It falls into Sheol, and I get the extra bonus tav on the end and the double segel pattern, geshet. Geshet. What about nasa? It doesn't have a holem, so I get roots 2 and 3. Root 1 goes away, and the bonus tav shows up. I wanted to add a segulate pattern here. But why do I have double pathak instead of double segul? The reason is that root 3 is a guttural, and gutturals prefer what kind of vowel? That's right, A-class vowels. So instead of se'et, I get sa'at, like na'ar. Nasa becomes yisa, since that's not a holem theme vowel. My infinitive construct can undergo aphoresis here. So the root 1 is missing. 2 and 3 are visible. The bonus tav shows up after root 3. And something interesting has happened here. Sate is probably from something like this. I'll jot it down below. It would have been samic, not samic, seen, it would have been seen with a segol, aleph with a segol, and the tav. And what seems to have happened here is that the aleph has quiesced, and so the vowel goes away, and then the segol compensatorily lengthens into a long seri. Okay? So sate, that's one form for the infinitive construct. Se'ath is another way that this could show up. And then naso, which is showing all 3 root letters. That is to say, the verb nasa could also follow a strong pattern as well. So you could see all 3 of those. The last form is from Nathan, the imperfect yatain, the infinitive construct. Doesn't look very much like what we're talking about. Where does tate come from? It's similar to what just happened over here. It would have been Nathan, 3 root letters. Root 1 falls out. The tav and the noon are roots 2 and 3. I'm going to add a bonus tav. The noon is not final, so I have to change it to the non-final noon. So let's do that. And then what vowel pattern would I be adopting here? I would add the double segol, tenet, and then guess what? The noon here decides it wants to assimilate and become a tav. And when it does that, this doubling dot should have appeared, and this segol compensatorily lengthens to a seri. It becomes tate. Okay? But can I put a dagesh forte in a final letter? The answer is no. So what I'm left with is visibly tate, with a dagesh forte hovering above this final tav, waiting to drop in. Okay? As soon as I start adding pronominal suffixes, that tav's going to get its doubling dot. So take a look at what I've got. Root 1 of Nathan is missing. The tav I see with the dagesh lene is root 2, and root 3 is missing. So I only see one of my original root letters from the verb Nathan. Okay? Nathan. So this is a little bit tricky. Now, when we add pronominal suffixes to these forms that undergo aphoresis, we're going to see that the segulate pattern gets lost. Segulate patterns always stress root 1, geshet, sa'at, right? But when we add pronominal suffix, I'm going to get a short vowel under root 1 and a silent shava under root 2. In this case, geshet becomes gishto when I add the 3ms pronoun. Gishto. And I'll just remind you that you've seen this before with segulate nouns like melek, right? Melek in the singular is a segulate noun. When I add the pronominal suffix, what does it become? It becomes malko. Malko. The root 1 gets a short vowel, root 2 gets a silent shava, and then root 3 takes whatever the pronominal suffix is. Melek is a king, malko is his king. Okay? So geshet becomes gishto. Which vowel you get really depends on what the original short vowel would have been. or depends on features like gutturality. So gishto, his act of approaching. Sa'at becomes sa'to, his act of traveling. Sa'at is the form out of these two that takes the pronominal suffix, so it becomes sa'atho, his act of lifting up. Or if it follows the strong pattern, nos-o, and I get a silent shiva there, nos-o, and then tate becomes tito, tito. And notice the hovering dagesh forte over that tav gets to drop in. And now I see the dagesh forte that represents the root 3 nun. Okay, so I can see root 2 and root 3 as a dagesh forte. The tav you see here is the bonus tav with the pronominal suffix. Okay, so tito is his act of giving. Why did this become a Keurig when it was a sere? Well, because my accent is on the O, which means this, when the dagesh forte arrives, is a closed, unaccented syllable, and that requires a short vowel. Okay, so the sere had to shorten to a Keurig. All right, so those are the forms. Let's look at the last thing that the chapter discusses, and that is the matter of Laqach. Laqach is a verb that means to take. You've had this verb in your vocab list for a while. The thing about Laqach is it's a verb with multiple personalities, or some might refer to it as a verb with split personalities. What do I mean by that? Well, look at the verb Laqach. Root 1 is what letter? That's right, that is a lamed. That is not a nun. This is a verb that is one lamed. But what is it going to behave like? It's going to behave in the cal stem as if it were a one nun verb. This verb thinks it's a one nun verb in the cal stem. In all the other stems, it behaves normally. In all the other stems where it occurs. But in the cal, it acts like a one nun verb. In what ways does it act like a one nun verb? Well, think about the cal perfect 3ms. We have Laqach, just like, for example, Nagash became, Nagash, all right, we don't want a dot there, we'll get rid of that. So Nagash, the nun is visible, the lamed's visible, so in the cal perfect, one nun verbs are normal, and this one lamed verb is as well. The cal imperfect of Nagash becomes Yegash. Double root 2, and the doubling dot represents root 1 assimilated. Yekach is my form for Laqach in the cal imperfect. Cal imperfect, Yekach is he will take. It would have been Yilkach, but the lamed has assimilated as if it were a nun. Yekach, Yekach. So I do see roots 2 and 3 here. Root 1 is the dagesh forte. The imperative. Since the theme vowel of the imperfect is not holum, what's it going to do in the imperative and the infinitive construct? It will allow root 1 to undergo aphoresis and fall into Sheol. So I will only see roots 2 and 3. Yekach, chop off the head, I'm left with kach for the imperative to ms. Take, kach. If I told a woman to take, it would be what? Kachi with a Keurig yod. Tell a group of men to take, kachu. Tell a group of women to take, kachna with the nun kamate. Those are all the imperative endings, you know. And then the cal infinitive construct, since my imperfect theme vowel is not holum, allows root 1 to undergo aphoresis, and so the lamed, which is behaving like a nun, falls into Sheol. I'm left with roots 2 and 3 here. The bonus tav shows up. I adopt a segulet pattern, but since chet is a guttural, instead of double segul, I get double pathak, because gutturals prefer, you guessed it, A-class vowels. Kachat, kachat. Now if I wanted to say his act of taking, it would be kach to, his kachat. Okay, so remember, we get short vowel, silent shava, bonus tav takes whatever the pronominal suffix is. Laqachto, his act of taking. All right, that is one noon verb morphology.